It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. I'm Yalda Hakim, live from Beirut. Our top story. A major escalation in Israel's conflict with Hezbollah, a huge airstrike on Beirut targeting the militant group's leader. The strike came just after the Israeli Prime Minister told the United Nations his country will fight on in both Gaza and Lebanon.
And I have another message for this assembly and for the world outside this hall. We are winning.
Tonight, the first signs of Hezbollah's retaliation are seen in the skies above northern Israel as Iran calls the strike a game-changing escalation.
Also coming up on Sky News at 10.
When I'm with her, I'm reminded of the virtues of the English.
But isn't she American?
Exactly.
Dame Maggie Smith, the multi-Oscar winning actor who won new fame with Downton Abbey and the Harry Potter films, has died aged 89. Plus, Donald Trump meets Ukraine's president and uses the meeting to speak about his bond with Vladimir Putin.
And I also have a very good relationship, as you know, with President Putin. And I think if we win, I think we're going to get it resolved very quickly.
And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight.
Good evening and welcome to Beirut, where earlier this evening Israel launched a massive airstrike on Hezbollah's headquarters, barely an hour after Benjamin Netanyahu made a defiant address to the United Nations in New York. The militant group's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, is thought to have been the target. A source close to Hezbollah says he's alive, but we are yet to hear from the organization directly. President Biden said tonight that he didn't have prior knowledge of the strike. The Iranian embassy here called it a dangerous, game-changing escalation. And in the last hour, the Israeli military called for the immediate evacuation of specific buildings in the city's southern suburbs. Here's our international correspondent, John Sparks.
If there was a lingering suggestion of a ceasefire in Lebanon, it was destroyed in a series of deafening explosions in Beirut. The Israeli Defense Force deploying overwhelming firepower in the city's southern suburbs. Clouds of smoke and dust saturating the sky. The target was Hezbollah's central command headquarters. Israel said it was embedded under residential buildings in a district called Dahia. The result, in the words of a Lebanese minister, was complete decimation. The destruction of 4 to 6 apartment blocks. And in images broadcast from the scene, we see slabs of concrete and gaping craters, and local residents searching for friends and loved ones in the dark. The number of casualties is expected to be high. It is one of the most densely populated parts of Beirut.
We are 100 meters, maybe less, from the blast site. We've seen ambulances screaming up and down this road, heavy machinery as well, big diggers going in to move the rubble. We have seen pictures of twisted metal, rubble, the product of large Israeli munitions, 2,000-pound bunker-busting bombs.
This is the 5th attack on this suburb in the past week, with Israeli media claiming that Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, was the target. Lebanese sources later reported he was unharmed, although Hezbollah itself has said nothing. Israel has defended its operation.
Israel is doing what every sovereign state in the world would do if they had a terror organization that seeks their destruction on their border.
At the UN General Assembly, the sight of Israel's prime minister was too much for some, yet he brought his own supporters to hear a defiant set piece. The campaign against Hezbollah would continue.
Israel's soldiers have fought back with incredible courage and with heroic sacrifice. And I have another message for this assembly and for the world outside this hall. We are winning.
Netanyahu made no mention of negotiation. Israel's wars in Gaza and Lebanon will continue.
We will fight until we achieve victory, total victory. There is no substitute for it. Israel must also defeat Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Shortly after he finished speaking, the strikes began, his office releasing this picture of the Prime Minister authorizing the attack. These blasts have unnerved the city. They are the biggest since the conflict began. And with the fate of Hezbollah's leader unknown, fear builds throughout the region. John Sparks, Sky News, Beirut.
Well, in a moment, we'll be speaking to our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, who is live for us in New York. But first, let's go to our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, who is in Haifa in northern Israel. And Ali, I mean, the situation here on the ground is escalating. There were some IDF warnings that were issued as well, telling people to move out of the southern Beirut suburb where we saw that attack take place. But we're also hearing more information coming in from the IDF. Just bring us up to date.
Well, the Israeli military are attacking Lebanon still tonight. Hezbollah have fired around 30 missiles into northern Israel. We witnessed some of the interceptions close to where we are in Haifa. One of those missiles hit a house directly in the village of Fayed, which is just to the east of here. But by way of response, that is nothing compared to what we might expect is coming in the next hours and days from Hezbollah. There's still confusion around the fate of Hassan Nasrallah. That seems to be key to everything. He was initially said to be safe in statements, but those statements came out suspiciously quickly, and there's been no word for some hours since. I would expect that if he is alive, he'll be looking to appear on television sooner rather than later to reassure his supporters that he's still alive and to send a message of defiance to the Israelis. I've just heard from an Israeli military official that saying no BDA yet. BDA means battle damage assessment. So they will be doing, as every military does after airstrikes, assessment of the damage caused and the effect of that airstrike. So clearly they are still trying to establish what was done, who was killed, and what effect they had. It is a very dangerous moment. The assumption is that Hezbollah would respond in a very big way, probably targeting Tel Aviv in a way that they haven't done so before. But I think there are a number of questions around that. Do they have the ability to coordinate such a strike, given that their command structure has been degraded so significantly, not just from this strike today, but over recent days? The Iranian Supreme Leader, key again to all of this, has convened an emergency security council at his compound outside Tehran. The Iranians will be an important factor in what comes next. If, and it is still at this stage, and if Nasrallah is dead, does Iran decide to take the gloves off? They've held back quite a lot so far, not wanting to get directly involved in the war, but do they decide this is now the time to use the thousands of missiles that they have funded for Hezbollah? Or do they decide that it has gone too far to bring an end to this round of fighting and leave Hezbollah in some state to fight another day?
Ali, thanks so much for that. Let's go straight to Dom, who joins us from New York. And Dom, extraordinary to think that we began the morning here today thinking that there might be some kind of ceasefire, 21-day ceasefire deal that was led by the United States and France. And we've ended it with a massive series of explosions here on southern Beirut, the biggest that has taken place all week. And one has to wonder, with the world's leaders all gathered in New York, what conversations were they having, and why isn't this situation de-escalating but rather escalating?
Yeah, it really has been a long difficult and really worrying day. The UN Security Council meeting is now an hour or so into its second meeting of 2 days, and we've heard the same kind of hand-wringing expressions of concern, calls for a diplomatic solution, a lot of concern about the civilians of Lebanon and Israel who need to be protected. But that's just a repeat of what happened 2 nights ago, and skeptics would say, what is the point of any of this? If that debate 2 days ago led to urgent diplomatic pressure on both parties, led to a ceasefire plan that was approved by all G7 nations and 3 Middle Eastern nations, and led to the understanding that both Israel and Hezbollah, being lent on by Lebanon and Iran, were both amenable to the idea, only to see that unravel because the Israeli Prime Minister then took things in a completely different direction and approved his military to carry out the biggest attack, really, that we've seen for a long time, and what is effectively a step change, the biggest and most significant change in Israeli tactics since this war began, using almost certainly American-supplied 2,000-pound bunker-busting bombs, several of them, to strike Hezbollah's headquarters in Beirut, and it seems to try and assassinate Hassan Nasrallah, whose fate is still unknown, although people close to him within the organisation say that he is still alive. But that's not been proven yet. So the diplomacy continues. Ahead of the UN Security Council meeting here, we heard from Arab countries, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, part of the Arab Council, as it's called, all saying that Netanyahu, the Israelis, must be restrained, must be stopped. But from the Americans, we've heard really very muted diplomacy. We heard a speech from their ambassador a little while ago in the Security Council, which really could have been made at any point in the last year or so, not really acknowledging that there has been this big, significant change today. And we heard from Antony Blinken, US Secretary of State, saying that the Israelis have a right to defend themselves. But what we've not seen is a response to those calls from Middle Eastern countries, from America, to restrain their ally Israel. It seems the Americans so far happy to see this continue. Certainly publicly, they are not pressuring Israel to show restraint any more than we have seen recently, even though there has been this major change, it seems, in Israeli tactics. So I think what we're waiting for now in the coming hours and days is what the Iranians say. Their ambassador will be addressing the Security Council in the next hour or so. We've heard from Iranians where you are saying that they feel red lines have been crossed, that this is a very significant change in what Israel is doing. Is Iran going to feel that its ally and its proxy and its insurance policy, as many people believe the Iranians regard Hezbollah, is fatally compromised, and therefore that requires Iran to get involved directly in this? Is it going to allow Hezbollah to use its massive arsenal of missiles in a more unrestrained way, and will that lead to a much more, or an even bigger, escalation of this conflict? And if that happens, what does America do? What do other allies of Israel do in return? And then the other question, of course, is what does Israel do on the ground? Is it going to send in troops buoyed up by what the Israeli leader appears to believe is a belief that his forces are winning and total victory is achievable? It's a very dangerous moment for the region, and the diplomacy so far is making no progress, really, to try and restrain the dangerous direction in which the Middle East is heading.
Dom, Ali, thank you both very much for bringing us up to date on the latest situation here across the region and, of course, the diplomacy in New York. Well, as they were saying, they're a very dangerous moment for this region. We'll be watching all of the developments here on the ground. Our correspondents will continue to provide analysis and reports. But Barbara, back to you in the studio for now.
Yalda, thank you. Let's take a look now at some of the day's other news. And Dame Maggie Smith has died at the age of 89. She won 2 Oscars early in her career and was a perennial favourite of the critics. But she attained global recognition and fame in her latter years for roles in the Harry Potter films and Downton Abbey. Our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer reports.
Those withering put-downs.
I'm so looking forward to seeing your mother again. When I'm with her, I'm reminded of the virtues of the English.
But isn't she American?
Exactly.
Pier totum locomotor.
That spellbinding talent.
Man the boundaries, protect us, do your duty.
While to younger generations, she'll be remembered for starring in 2 of the biggest shows on the big and small screens.
I've always wanted to use that spell.
Dame Maggie Smith, one of our finest talents, honed her skills in a lifetime on stage and screen. Her career built in a different era. Growing up in Oxford, it was her English teacher who'd encouraged her to act. Her natural gift quickly stood out on stage, securing her parts like Hedda Gabler and Desdemona opposite the late Laurence Olivier, who'd spotted her talent early on.
Morning, girls. Good morning. Morning.
Her mum only abandoned the idea of her daughter being a secretary when Smith won an Oscar for the prime of Miss Jean Brodie in 1969.
If scandal is to your taste, Miss Mackay, I shall give you a feast. Miss Brodie, I am a teacher. I am a teacher first, last, always. Do you imagine that for one instant I will let that be taken from me without a fight?
This win wasn't a one-off.
The winner is Maggie Smith in California Suite.
Almost a decade later, she picked up another for California Suite, while successfully maintaining her parallel film and stage careers.
I just really can't believe it. I always knew we could rely on you.
Some of her best-known movies included Tea with Mussolini and playing a dame in Gosford Park.
Dame Maggie Smith for services to drama.
Over a decade after she was made a dame in real life.
You phoned me when it happened to me, and you said it doesn't make any difference, you can still swear.
Yes.
Do you remember?
You can swear more.
You can swear more, yeah. Just try and do it privately. No, I won't do it now.
While her box office smashes included Sister Act,
excuse me,
and Hook,
Peter, don't you know who you are?
She'd known nothing on the scale of this.
Now, today we will be transforming animals into water goblets.
Already a household name, she won over a new generation of fans playing Professor Minerva McGonagall in the Harry Potter movies. Finding the attention, she confessed, a bit much. And then, of course, this.
Yeah, how'd you find Downton on your return?
Much the same, really. Probably too much the same, but then I don't want to cast a pall over all the happiness.
How could you ever do that?
Her gift for acid-tongued comedy seemingly made for Violet Crawley, the Dowager Countess of Grantham in Downton Abbey, watched around the world, but not by Dame Maggie herself.
Have you ever watched Downton? No.
I've got the box set.
Downton and Potter, two modern cultural landmarks of the big and small screen.
Her great gift as an actress was that she could make you cry your eyes out one minute and then laugh like a drain the next without turning into someone different. She could synthesize the character to have all these different aspects. And she was a joy to write for.
In a career spanning 7 decades, Dame Maggie Smith was one of the most versatile, accomplished and beloved actresses of her generation. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
At least 40 people are reported to have died in the United States after Hurricane Helene made landfall late last night. Helene began in the Gulf of Mexico, picking up intensity as it moved towards the Florida coast yesterday. The storm made landfall in northwestern Florida as a Category 4 storm just after 11 o'clock local time last night. Large swathes of Florida's western coastline were placed on alert with concerns a major storm surge could threaten lives and property near where the weather system crossed the coast. Well, the storm has continued to weaken as it moves further inland, bringing rain and wind speeds of up to 30 miles an hour towards the large metropolitan areas of Atlanta and Nashville. Sky's U.S. correspondent Martha Kellner reports.
In the seaside town of Cedar Key, they don't know how much more of this they can take. Helene was the third hurricane to strike here in just over a year. This, the worst one yet.
However bad we imagined it would be when we were fighting this thing in the darkness, it's so much worse in the daylight.
Overnight, winds of 140 miles per hour. But it was the 10-foot storm surge that did the damage here. Homes, restaurants, a whole town swallowed.
Oh my goodness.
Residents haven't been allowed to return to Cedar Key yet. When they do get here, this is what they'll find. It must have been utterly terrifying for those who didn't evacuate as a wall of water came towards them. 3 miles away from the coast, this is seawater. That's how far it travelled. It's mostly subsided now.
The water came up this high.
But the memory of riding out this storm in their RV will stay.
Now, this is 6th one we've been through while we've been in this campground.
Why do you think the hurricanes are so bad at the moment?
It's natural weather change. That's what I believe. It was just bad luck.
The heft of Helene is most striking. Treasure Island is hundreds of miles from the point of impact. But look at this. 5 people died in this area, at least 2 from drowning. A hellish scene unfolded through the night. Old and young caught out.
Anybody in your house?
Most had evacuated. Emergency services rescuing others. 1 man and his dog saved when their boat failed 25 miles offshore. But Helene's impact has gone far beyond Florida. Georgia isn't usually affected by hurricanes. This is different. And in Tennessee, staff and patients evacuated to the roof of a hospital engulfed by floodwater. Helene may have been downgraded on the hurricane scale, but numbers don't tell the story here. This is historic flooding. It's widespread, and it's not over yet.
And Martha joins me live now from Cedar Key in Florida. Martha, what has the impact been where you are?
A huge impact. Emergency services still arriving in Cedar Key to assess the full scale of the damage here from Hurricane Helene. I've just arrived, but I can tell you already it is a scene of mass destruction here. This house that you can see completely destroyed. I was just speaking to a man around the corner. He owns the liquor store here, or at least what used to be the liquor store. His business completely wrecked. He was making the point that now in this part of Florida, if you live within 3 miles of the coast, you can no longer get insurance for your business or your house. So he's worried about the amount of people who may just choose to abandon this area. So it is a scene of grief really here for what they've lost. But the attention now turning, as you saw in my report, to other parts of the south of the United States. Dams now under threat in Tennessee and in North Carolina. What is already a very bad situation could yet worsen.
Martha Kellner with the latest there from Florida. Martha, thank you. Well, despite the ferocity of Hurricane Helene and the devastation caused, it has nonetheless been a relatively quiet hurricane season so far, after forecasters had predicted that warming oceans would lead to an increase in the number of extreme weather events of this kind. So what's going on? Here's our science and technology editor, Tom Clark.
This hurricane season was forecast to be one of the worst. The US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration predicting 17 to 25 named storms, up to 13 hurricanes, as many as 7 of them major hurricanes, that's Category 3 or above. Why? Well, it's heat that fuels storms, and ocean temperatures in the North Atlantic have never been warmer. Average temperature is white on this map, orange to red above average. Sea temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, some of the highest ever recorded. A key predictor of a big storm season. And early on, it looked as if they were right. In late June, Hurricane Beryl became the fastest growing hurricane ever, a Category 5 storm as it grazed past the coast of Jamaica, the first time this most severe class of hurricane formed that early in the season. Beryl was a beast, but not the harbinger everyone feared. So far, there have been 9 named storms, well below the 17 to 25 predicted, and 2 big gaps this year when nothing happened at all. So what's going on? The clue seems to lie on the other side of the Atlantic. This area of cooler water linked to La Nina has helped push the African monsoon further north this year. Fueled by record heat, it caused catastrophic flooding in Central and West Africa. But it shifted the weather system that typically spawns hurricanes here and spins them towards the Caribbean.
It's not dependent on one factor. Sea temperatures are one factor, but we have to look at other things which vary within the scale of a few weeks during the course of the season to work out exactly how a season is going to pan out. But certainly I would say we shouldn't write off this season as being quiet yet, because with 2 months to go, it can all change. And in fact, there are signs that we could be getting 2 or 3 more tropical storms in the Atlantic within the next week to 10 days.
There's abundant evidence our warming oceans and atmosphere are making storms more intense, but predicting where they'll occur and how often is never simple, and perhaps getting harder as our planet gets hotter.
2 boys have been given life sentences with a minimum term of 8.5 years after they killed Sean Sisahai in Wolverhampton. The boys, who were described as Britain's youngest knife murderers, launched a brutal machete attack on the 19-year-old in a park last November. The Prime Minister said today that he was shocked to the core by the crime. Sky's correspondent Becky Cottrell reports.
Sean Sisahai was just 19 years old when he was savagely murdered. He'd left his home and family in the Caribbean to come to the UK for surgery to save his sight. Instead, he was killed by 2 children armed with a machete. I spoke to Sean's parents on the beach where they scattered his ashes.
In time to come, he would have married, have kids, we would have get grandchildren, enjoy our grandkids, and nothing like that anymore. And you know, watch him marry that day make us feel so happy, but none of that. And that just make us heartbroken like that.
This is Sean and a friend on the night he was killed. They're buying soft drinks. They then walk to a park. There, he was hacked to death by 2 12-year-old boys in a random and unprovoked attack. Hours earlier, one of the boys had posed with his machete across his chest. He later hid the murder weapon under his bed. Both children denied murdering Sean and blamed each other.
Sean was killed by a stab wound to his back caused by a machete, which almost went through his entire body. I'm sure from the nature of these injuries that the defendants intended to kill Sean. They acted together to do so, although I cannot be sure which one inflicted the fatal stab wound.
Suresh and Manishwari are haunted by thoughts of their son's final moments.
They murder him. They chop him, they chop his leg, they chop his shoulder, they beat him, they cuff him. They do a monstrous job.
I spoke to them before Sean's killers were sentenced.
I want them to be life in prison, what they did to Sean.
Learning the young killers will serve a fraction of that brings fresh heartbreak.
Congrats, Sean, you do great.
Sean was murdered the day before he was due to start an engineering course in the UK.
He would say, Mommy, I will start to work on my own money. Because a child like that, he don't like to ask we for any money or so. Yeah, very loving child.
They'd hoped their son would build a life for himself in England. Instead, he was taken from them in the most cruel way imaginable. Becky Cottrell, Sky News, Anguilla.
Lawyers for victims of alleged sexual abuse by former Harrods boss Mohammed Al-Fayed have confirmed they now represent 60 survivors. And tonight, Mr. Al-Fayed's son has been reacting to the allegations. Sky's Saba Chowdhury joins me here in the studio. And Saba, this is the first time that we hear from a family member. What did he say?
Good evening. Absolutely. This is the first time that we are hearing from a member of the Fayed family since the most recent allegations about Mohammed Al-Fayed, the billionaire businessman accused of rape by 5 women and of sexual misconduct by over 100 others. Now, his son, Omar Fayed, an environmental entrepreneur, has said the following in a statement. I am horrified and deeply concerned by the allegations recently brought to light against my late father. The extent and explicit nature of the allegations are shocking and has thrown into question the loving memory I had of him. How this matter could have been concealed for so long and in so many ways raises further disturbing questions, he said. Now, he went on to say in his statement that his commitment has always been to truth and justice, that alleged victims deserve full transparency and accountability, and that he unequivocally supports legitimate any legitimate investigation that may take place. Now, the Metropolitan Police have not yet opened an official investigation into the claims against Mohammed Al-Fayed, but they are urging any women, any potential victims to come forwards with any possible concerns or experiences they may have as soon as possible.
Sabah Chowdhury with the latest on that story. Sabah, thank you. Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelenskyy met at Trump Tower in New York in an attempt to rebuild the relationship shaken by Mr. Trump's sometimes ambiguous comments about who was responsible for the war in Ukraine. Now, they put on a friendly show for the cameras, but the Ukrainian president had to listen to Mr. Trump give warm words about Vladimir Putin.
And I also have a very good relationship, as you know, with President Putin. And I think if we win, I think we're going to get it resolved very quickly. I really think we're going to get it resolved.
I hope we have more good relations.
We're going to have, oh, I see. Yeah, but you know, it takes two to tango, you know, and we're going to have a good meeting today. And I think the fact that we're even together today is a very good sign.
Well, Mr. Trump may regard Vladimir Putin as a friend, but the Russian president has been escalating his threats of nuclear retaliation if whoever is in the White House gives Volodymyr Zelenskyy authorization to use U.S. weapons to strike at targets within Russia. So how do the Russian people themselves view the nuclear threat? Here's our Moscow correspondent, Ivor Bennett.
When the talk above ground is of nuclear weapons, where better to be than down here? We've come to one of Moscow's Cold War bunkers, buried 65 meters underground. It was built as a top-secret command center for the Soviet leadership. No sign of the Politburo now, but there are tourists learning about red lines and red buttons. So what do they think of Vladimir Putin's latest threats, that Russia could respond with nukes if it's struck by conventional missiles?
Everyone is scared of a situation like this, but when you are surrounded by enemies on all sides, there are probably no options left.
I hope that the West will understand us correctly and stop interfering. Back off.
Visitors are shown a replica of the first Soviet atomic bomb. The hardware's moved on since, but the warnings remain the same.
Being here really feels like you're stepping back in time. But it's not just down here that there are echoes of history. It's also up there with these threats of nuclear force. And the question is really the same as it was during the Cold War. Is the Kremlin bluffing or not?
Vladimir Putin's red lines have been crossed before. The West has supplied missiles, tanks and fighter jets to Ukraine, all without retaliation. But Moscow insists this time it's different.
Have you ever heard a very old Russian proverb that Russians are long to move, but then they move fast? That's the case.
If, for example, Ukraine actually uses British Storm Shadow missiles to strike inside Russia, what, Russia's going to nuke London?
Everything that is written in our nuclear doctrine, you should take very serious.
Meanwhile, back in the bunker, a reminder of what's at stake. If the aim was to complicate decisions in the West, Russia's certainly done that. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Moscow.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the Guardian columnist Zoe Williams and the political commentator Benedict Spence. Among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Guardian: Israel launches its heaviest air attacks on Lebanon. We'll be right back. day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Guardian columnist Zoe Williams and the political commentator Benedict Spence. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. Welcome both. So let's take a look at what is on some of those front pages. Well, following the Israeli airstrikes on Hezbollah's headquarters in Beirut, the Eye pictures a pile of burning rubble, accompanied by the headline, Israel's warning to Iran. The Guardian leads on that too. Their headline, Israel launches heaviest air attacks on Lebanon. The Mirror marks the death of Dame Maggie Smith, calling the actress a true legend. The Times reports that the government intends to let university tuition fees rise in line with inflation, but will also reintroduce maintenance grants for students who need them. The Express quotes a group that campaigns on behalf of the elderly, describing the Chancellor Rachel Reeves as vindictive over what it believes is the government's attitude to pensioners. According to the Financial Times, UK government will need to put £1.6 trillion towards public infrastructure projects in the next decade and a half. The Mail carries an extract from the memoirs of their columnist, Boris Johnson, in which he claims he considered invading the Netherlands to seize their supply of COVID vaccines. The Telegraph repeats that same anecdote. And The Sun leads with former ITV presenter Philip Schofield's return to television. I was thrown under the bus, he says. And the reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us discuss them. And we are joined tonight by Zoe Williams and Benedict Spence. Thank you so much for being with us on a Friday night. OK, let's take a look at, the main story in a lot of papers. Let's start with The Guardian. Zoe, Israel launches heaviest air attacks on Lebanon. And that is that attack that we've seen earlier today on Hezbollah headquarters. And there's still a big question mark as to whether the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, was killed in those attacks or not. A game changer, do you think, Zoe?
It's certainly a game changer because it does call into question whether, well, A, Hezbollah is much more powerful than Hamas, and it cannot be, the idea that you could simply raise it to the ground and obliterate it is fanciful. But B, of course, it does beg the question: how does Iran respond, and can Iran possibly not respond? Now, Iran has always been the dog that didn't bark in the year up to now, because there were so many times during the bombardments in Gaza when Iran could have felt itself to be provoked and kept really uncharacteristically quiet. But it would be very, very difficult if Nasrallah's been killed for Iran to stay out of it, because he was such a close ally and, really fundamental part of that axis between Lebanon and Iran. It does seem to be it's not an accident by Netanyahu. He does not want the war in Gaza to end. It does seem like it's moving closer to the return of the hostages. It does seem like it's moving closer to a ceasefire. The pressure on him to bring about, or to at least kind of agree to a temporary ceasefire, is building all the time. His extremely bellicose, angry performance at the UN is testament to how much international pressure he feels under. And as soon as whatever happens in Gaza, as soon as it progresses to anywhere, the attention really comes back to him, and the criticism will begin. So, the escalation into Lebanon is not an accident, but it may come to look extremely haphazard and not pan out the way he wanted it to.
Benedict, before I come to you, let me just bring you some breaking news that is coming into us from the Reuters news agency, and that is that blasts have been heard in Beirut. So we can assume that attacks are resuming now in the Lebanese capital. Benedict, what do you make of the developments we've seen?
If Iran gets involved militarily, the United States gets involved militarily, and Iran can't win that conflict. Iran, as you said, is the dog that didn't bark because it can't, really. It doesn't yet have tactical nuclear weapons that it can deploy, so it won't feel confident actually engaging Israel directly. And the question is it prepared actually to do that over Lebanon, which is a basket case of country. It's effectively a failed state. In the same way that Hamas gambled so that that proxies in the region might get involved on its behalf if it attacked Israel, and they didn't really, because actually Hassan Nasrallah has talked a lot but done everything that he could realistically to avoid Hezbollah getting involved directly into a war. The Israelis have demolished Hamas and demolished much of Gaza with it, and now they are very clearly goading Hezbollah into trying to do something very silly. They've created a massive power vacuum through their targeted assassinations of senior figures. And what we'll be looking for now is to see what kind of beast is Hezbollah. Is it going to make a rash decision? Is it going to start launching rockets full pelt, giving the Israelis justification? Is it going to hope that Iran comes to its aid? Very unlikely. Or is it going to perhaps try to de-escalate the situation itself? Because it has to understand, in the same way that Hamas could not win the war against Israel, Hezbollah, it can fight them to a standstill as it did in 2005, but it's not a war it can necessarily win, and it will take huge casualties as part of that. So I think it's all a gamble by Netanyahu to see how this ends, but I do think actually right now it's sort of leaning towards Israel's favour.
I think Hezbollah would argue that how can they de-escalate a conflict which Israel is escalating? I mean, it's very difficult.
By not firing back, which might seem very strange, but actually you're under no obligation to start firing hundreds of thousands of missiles at the Israelis if they're coming in. If you shrink back into the shadows, you don't necessarily have to escalate that situation.
Let me just bring another front page that's just got a similar angle. The Eye front page there, Israel's warning to Iran, making many of the points that we were touching on. Let's move on now to some domestic news. The Times, page 6 and 7, and it's the Labour freebies story that goes on. Zoe, explain it to us.
So, obviously, the Keir Starmer in particular, but also the entire cabinet has been, well, not the entire cabinet, but other members of the cabinet have been under fire for the past week, actually stretching before the Labour conference for the freebies they've accepted. It centred on Keir Starmer's acceptance of £75,000 worth of football tickets, but many people will think that the 2,500 he accepted for glasses was worse, because, who needs those glasses? Anyway, I'm trying not to editorialise. The Rachel Reeves also accepted some clothing funds from an ally and donor. It's not looking great. I mean, Keir Starmer there, 133,000 since over the past 5 years, I think, not just these 3 months. What's so dispiriting about it, if you're a Labour supporter or even just an impartial voter, is it kind of new things emerge all the time. This £16,000 has just emerged after the gigantic declarations before. And B, there's something so amateurish about the explanations. They're behaving like Instagram influencers,
I think it's very much giving off the indication that it's a very unsure government, that there is a lot of sort of immaturity around it. I think actually a lot of that stems from the fact that during the election campaign, Labour didn't actually get quite as much scrutiny as perhaps it might otherwise have done, certainly not as much as Jeremy Corbyn did in the previous election cycle, because there was a perception that it was a fait accompli, and also, let's be honest, it was fun to stick the boot in to the Tories. Now, I think there's a bit of leaning a bit so far the other way, because there is clearly just so much to dig into.
Well, there was something strategic about this, right? There were, absolutely, definitely, just before conference, they kind of, a coordinated attempt was made to hit him where it hurts in what he claimed was the difference between him and the Conservatives, his probity. And this is a terrible look.
Going to have to leave it there for now. Coming up, tributes to the legendary actress Dame Maggie Smith, who died today. We'll look back on her life and career next.
we arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's futures.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours, and we're going to take it back.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power.
Now, freedom!
There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes, torrential rain and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued with its ultimatum to the people of Ashkelon, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in. Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous. We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, Zoe Williams and Benedict Spence. Let's go straight to the Mirror front page, and the story that obviously has been replicated in many of the papers. Front page of the Mirror, a true legend. Tears and tributes as Dame Maggie Smith dies at the age of 89. There's not a lot of people you could write a true legend for, and that applies to you, but it does to her, doesn't it, Zoe?
It certainly does, and we would... You know, her performances are so... Probably all of us, at every stage of our life, could name the one that that was formative in our understanding of what an actor was. So, you know, from somebody of my vintage, it would be her in Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, the just absolutely beautiful adaptation of the Muriel Spark, for which was the only thing that she won an Oscar for. But, you know, for my kids, they're going to be devastated that the Harry Potter actor has died.
Yeah, true. So will mine.
Yeah.
She won 2 Oscars, by the way.
Oh,
What was the other one for? The name has escaped me. It's not important, I suppose. But No, I mean,
California sweep, I'm being told.
Oh, being told.
It wasn't me, they told me.
You could have taken the credit for it. Nobody would have known. I mean, yes, obviously Harry Potter is the big thing. There's always the curse of so many sort of great actors of the stage in London, you know, people like Ian McKellen, is that they do all these sort of magnificent things and then they end up in a superhero film or something like that, and that's what they're remembered for. But, I mean, also, I remember watching her in David Copperfield on the BBC. There was a time when actually she was in all of those sorts of adaptations, which had a younger Daniel Radcliffe in it long before he was Harry Potter. Tea with Mussolini, all sorts of things, and such a great sort of breadth of talent, very funny, very serious, very sharp, could apply herself to all different sorts of classes and backgrounds, and it just sort of felt that she was one of those perpetual actors.
Well, that's what J.K. Rowling said in a tweet, so she couldn't quite, I don't remember how she worded it, but it was something like, I didn't think that she could die.
I mean, I think it has come as a bit of a shock because nobody thought that she was young, and at the same time, everybody sat there going, "But it's no age, 89."
But
you
also,
assume she had longer.
Also, I think her career, she was kind of had the same playing age for the past 40 years. So, the period in which she was kind of a young actor only went on for about 6 or 7 years, and then she was a kind of grande dame since the 80s.
Powerful.
Yeah. And I think that's a kind of role model for the endless career.
Absolutely. We have 90 seconds to talk about how we were about to invade the Netherlands at some point. Benedict, do you want to explain it? It's front page of the Daily Mail.
To explain.
Speaking of endless careers, Boris Johnson's memoir, which is being serialised on the front of the Mail and is apparently going to be the best. It's the memoir of the century, they say. I mean, that's quite a billing to live up to. At one point, he was thinking about potentially launching commandos into the Netherlands to a warehouse, I think, in Leiden, because there were 5 million AstraZeneca COVID vaccines that he thought belonged to the UK because they'd been developed here. But he was told under no sort of no other conditions that this is probably a very bad idea to have technically invaded a NATO ally over a shared vaccine programme, so it died. That's the story.
Let me just show the front page of the Daily Mail here. And the headline, Boris's dramatic plan for military raid on Holland to snatch back our vaccines. Here it is.
Don't you miss him? Don't you just miss him?
As terrible as that period was, I don't...
Is there a but after that?
I don't think I realised just how many stupider ideas were being discarded to get the ones that arrived in public.
So many throws at the dartboard of ideas that didn't quite come off.
I think if I'd known that he was sitting there going, "Shall we invade Holland?"
You should read the book. Wonder how many more there are.
I think I would have enjoyed it even less.
OK.
I'm looking forward to it coming out anyway, if only for this story.
Benedict, so we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for having gone through the papers with us. And now let's take a look at the weather. The weekend brings something a little bit drier and brighter, although it will feel cold in a northerly wind, and rain is set to return later on Sunday. It will be a cold start to Saturday morning with a touch of frost in rural spots. Most places will be dry, but thicker cloud will bring scattered, blustery showers to the northwest. The showers will become more widespread through the morning, mainly affecting northern and western areas, and possibly turning a little wintry over the Scottish mountains. Otherwise, most places will have a dry day with bright or sunny spells. Once the winds ease, it will feel warmer in the south and east.